Today's Breathcast guest is Anders Olsson. Anders is a breathwork expert. Expert gets thrown around way too easy these days. We know, we hear it all the time, don't we? But Anders has spent 10 years studying breathwork and is one of the foremost experts, especially when it comes to slow nasal breathing. If the name Anders Olsson sounds familiar at all to you and you've read James Nestor's book Breath, link in the description below, Anders is the person that James called, and actually they worked together on an exercise where they clogged their nose for 10 days as a bit of an experiment to see what would happen to their blood pressure, and you can see that in my previous podcast with Mr. Nestor. What a fantastic person, what an interesting conversation I had with this chap, and I really hope you enjoy it. We talked about all things to do with breathing, breath work and breath, and the difference between slow and fast and what the benefits are of different breathing exercises. So I really hope you get some benefit from today. One announcement from me is please stick through to the very end of this podcast, because I do have a big announcement to make, and I know we hear that quite a lot, don't we? There's a big announcement coming, but please have a listen to the end because there is something coming there as well. A couple of messages before we get stuck into the Breathcast. If you haven't done so, as always, please like, subscribe and share. It helps spread our message and grow our breathwork community. And the other thing, which I've mentioned a couple of times now, is Instagram. So thank you to all those people that went over to Instagram and click subscribe. It's looking a little bit less sad now, so thank you so much for that. But anyway, let's get stuck into the Breathcast with Anders. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do a part 2 soon as well, so let's get stuck into the Breathcast. Cheers. Hey, good morning, Anders, and thank you so much for being on Take a Deep Breath podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes. I'm really, really looking forward to getting stuck in and talking to you about breathing today. And I would love to ask you the very first question.
What is that?
For a second, I was like, oh God. I guess what would be great is if you could give my viewers a little bit about who you are, maybe just about what you do, just for those that maybe don't know who you are.
Yeah. So I have founded Conscious Breathing Method, and it's really just simple tips on how to breathe in your daily life. It's not rocket science, but it seems like a lot of us struggle with breathing in a good way. So I've been doing this for more than 10 years now. And the reason why I'm so hooked about this is because it helped me to reduce my inner stress. So quite immediately when I found out about breathwork, I noticed the effect on myself, and quite profound actually. And when you look at it, when you realize it's quite easy to see that when we are stressed out, when we're in turbo mode, we kind of have a breath that's also is in turbo mode. So by just slowing down your breathing low and slow and rhythmically, I was able to unlock my turbo and finally find the other gears in my car.
And what made that first breathwork session happen for you? How did you first discover this breathing
I
technique?
read a book based on the Buteyko method. It is called How to Swap Asthma for Life by Michael Clark, I think it's his name. Mm-hmm. And when reading it, I realized, wow, of course, this is more important than anything, more important than your eating habits, sleeping habits, even your exercise habits and whatnot, because we do it so often, like 1,000 times per hour.
That's really interesting because I think I've said this before on the podcast. I've never been quite sure. For me, years ago, I thought diet is the most important thing. And I was like, no. Exercise is the most important thing. And then I read a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, Dr. Matthew Walker. And I was like, sleep is the most important thing. And then this year I studied under Patrick McEwen, who did the oxygen advantage. I was like, breathing's the most important. And I think that, there's a combination. But I was going to ask you actually, so would you rank breathing above sleep? Would you say that breathing is the foundation, then it's sleep? Or would you maybe say the two are comparable? What do you think?
That's a really interesting question. I've also read Why We Sleep, and it's a great book. Funny enough, though, I don't think he mentions breathing in the book, does he?
No, I don't think so, no.
Oh. In my view, it's really related, breathing and sleep. And I think that good sleep lays the foundation for good breathing, and vice versa. So I don't know if we necessarily need to rank them, but in my view, I put breathing on the top of the list, because if we stop breathing, we die within minutes, right?
Yeah.
We can go without sleep for a few days, but
that book really had the opposite effect on me. It ruined my sleep for about 6 months because I got so scared. I was like, oh, I need to sleep. And I was saying to my girlfriend, I have to go to bed. I've got to get my sleep. And it took me about 6 months to chill out and go, just relax. It's okay. Because I was trying to get all this good sleep and I wouldn't get up early. And we went traveling last year and we had all these things where you have to get up at midnight to go and climb a volcano. And I was like, nope. Sleep is the most important thing. Yeah. And so I missed out on a couple of things anyway. So going back to...
I fully understand what you mean. Like you have to go through this obsession phase.
Absolutely. So with going back to breathing then and yourself, so you read the Buteyko book, you tried a breathing exercise, and what happened next? Where did your journey take you after that?
I started to train myself in yoga. It's called medical yoga. It's quite widespread here in Sweden and the Nordic countries. It's based on Kundalini yoga. I trained the Buteyko method. I'm really, really curious, so I started to read every book I could come across and research reports, and not the least also experiment with my own body and see. It's one thing reading something in a book or in a research report. It's something completely different to experience it yourself. So trying to figure out and I thought that there is something missing here. There is one thing how to breathe on the yoga mat or during different exercises, but I felt that how about our daily breathing habits, the 1,000 breaths we take each hour, when we talk, when we eat, when we exercise, when we concentrate at work, when we watch TV. That is the bulk. That is the main thing in my view. So that was my focus.
And can I ask you about eating and breathing? Because I've been guilty of being a quick eater, and I'm sucking the air in as I'm eating. So what advice do you give to people about eating and breathing? Is it calm down, relax? What would you say?
Well, I'm the same. I tend to look at myself as being born in turbo mode, more or less. So I've always been a fast eater. Even when I grew up, I even timed eating. So I remember taking in a bowl of cereal. It took me like 30 seconds because then I could, if I ate fast, I could sleep for another minute or two in the morning before going to school. But my advice there is to only take in food while exhaling.
So how does that work? So you mean put it into your mouth while you're breathing out?
Yeah.
And then okay, because sometimes you suck, don't you?
Yeah. And you swallow a lot of air, and that is as bad, I think, to have in the digestive system a lot of air as it is to have food in our lungs. We know where that what happens if we get food in our lungs. And,
yes.
That is what happens when we eat fast. We suck in air. So it's almost like blessing the food when you exhale before taking it in. And quite a lot of people think that's a game changer. Wow, it really helped me, because we may have tried, okay, I should chew the food like 30 times, and before you know it, you just forget about it. But this seems to be easier to remember, actually.
And so just so I understand it then, so are you saying that you take a breath out and then you eat?
You exhale through the nose while, so instead of inhaling and taking in the food, then you will swallow air. So you just exhale when put, may take some practice.
I think I have to go and practice that, because I am always... I like the word turbo mode, because I feel like I'm in turbo mode all the time. So it's how quickly can I eat? My coffee sometimes is too hot, so I'm slurping it, to get in quicker. Can I ask you, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but I've been trying to find the answer to it. Do you know why we can consciously flare our nostrils?
You mean
we can make them wider just by, do you know that why we have the conscious ability to do that? Because I always find it a bit strange that we're able to do that.
That's a new question to me. I never thought about that. I don't know.
If you
I
find
don't
the
know why.
answer, please let me know, because I know that it's, it's an automatic thing and it happens in animals automatically. But I think, is there an evolutionary benefit why we have the ability to just be standing here and just open the nostrils up? I don't know. And it's not about taking a breath either. You can do the two things separately, can't you?
Yeah, you can. And for one thing, what comes to mind is that our nose, compared to our other senses, our nose have a direct contact with the brain, right?
Right.
So our short-term memory and our the hippocampus, right? And compared to our ears and our eyes, the stimuli, the incoming stimuli, they are filtered before they reach the brain. But the nose has a direct contact. So I figure that our smell is a very important thing for our brain, and has probably been evolutionary wise. Is there food around, or smelling fire, or
Or something rotten maybe as well. If something's bad, we can
yeah,
smell that. We can smell rot very quickly, can't we? That's poisonous. So
true.
that's bad for us. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just
So we can with our eyes we can see like a few colors and dark and bright, but with our nose we can smell up to 400 different fragrances.
Really 400. Wow.
Yeah.
4 different ways. Crazy. So with you then. So we've got so you've done the potato. You've done some light, slow, deep breathing, I guess, or a variation of that. Very, very gentle breathing. How did you then become somebody that's just works in the breathwork industry? What was the next steps for you?
Well, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I like to figure out things on my own. I don't want it to be constricted by something invented by someone else. So I wanted to create my own stuff, and being able to put in whatever I found worked, and remove if I found out later it didn't work. So in conscious breathing, we talk about the 7 good breathing habits. And so that's obviously the nose. Good breathing starts in the nose. And then I actually don't use the word deep, because if I ask a person to take a deep breath, that person will most likely take a big breath. So
What's the difference? Could you explain the difference for us between deep and big?
Well, deep in a sense just means a low breath, right? But it's like that word is hijacked when it comes to breathing. We kind of tend to think of it as a big breath. So take a deep breath.
Shoulders
Everyone
go
more
up.
or less
Yeah.
will take a big breath. So of these good habits, I talk about low breathing low using the diaphragm, in opposite to the chest breathing that a lot of us engage in. So
Yes.
low goes hand in hand with slow. So you breathe low and slow and rhythmically. And when we take big breaths, we upset the oxygen and carbon dioxide balance. We take in too much oxygen and we exhale too much carbon dioxide. And it seems like a lot of us engage in those breathing habits where we tend to breathe a little shallow, a little too fast, not the obvious hyperventilation like everyone can spot, but a more hidden form of hyperventilation. But since we breathe so much, over time, this will have an effect. Similar to if we gain weight, we don't gain it all overnight. It happens maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kilo per year, and then 10 or 20 years later, we have this nice belly or whatever. And the same, I think, goes with our breathing. If we engage in slightly over breathing, over time, it will have more and more effect. So we know that we only use about 25% of the oxygen we inhale in a normal breathing according to the medical norm. But most of us, we don't take in only 6 liters per minute. We take in maybe 8, 10, 12, 15 liters per minute. So we take in too much oxygen, which is absolutely not needed, because we already have more than enough. We already only use a quarter when we have the normal volume of 6 liters per minute. So taking in twice as much, it's like having your car and figuring, okay, I'm driving at the same speed, but let's give it twice as much fuel. We know that that car won't work any better. Probably it will actually work worse. So that's similar to overeating when we are overbreathing. And that's one part of the equation. We take in too much oxygen, and we know that oxygen, the reason why we die if we stop breathing is because we are so dependent on oxygen. But at the same time, it's both a curse and a blessing. So in my view, there is nothing that is really either 100% good or 100% bad. Like we know that drinking water is good. So if you don't drink anything in a week, that's a huge stress for the body. But if you drink 10 liters in a day, that's also a huge stress. So the same with our breathing, we need oxygen, but at the same time, oxygen is very, very reactive. So if you have a fire and put oxygen on it, it will explode, right? And or if you take a bite in an apple and put it down, it will be exposed to oxygen. After just a few minutes, the apple will turn brown, and that is what happens in our body. Oxygen, it lays the foundation for effective energy production, but too much of it will lead to too many free oxygen radicals, too many, which will lead to inflammations and cellular damage. So we want to keep it within the range. So there is no point taking in more and thinking, oh, great, I'm oxygenating my body. But that is really not the case. We need to have a breathing that actually is in line with our body's requirements at a given activity, which differs if I'm sitting down or if I'm out jogging, for example. And that's one part of the equation. When we overbreathe, when we breathe too fast and shallow, we take in too much oxygen. And the other part is that we exhale too much carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is produced in our body. We take in oxygen when we inhale, and we exhale carbon dioxide. And that's a part of it is to a large extent, it's considered a waste product. Oh, carbon dioxide is just a poisonous waste gas, a part of the metabolism. When we take nutrients and oxygen and convert it to energy in the mitochondria, a byproduct is carbon dioxide, and we should just get rid of it as soon as possible. But in my view, that is really, really as far from the truth as you can come. I think actually carbon dioxide laid the foundation for good oxygenation, because to start with, it is carbon dioxide that controls breathing. So when we feel that, oh, I have air hunger, I feel that I'm about to drown, well, then it's because we have built up too much carbon dioxide in the body. And the carbon dioxide stimulates the brain stem, telling us, okay, it's time to breathe now. So we inhale, and then on the following exhale, we exhale the excess carbon dioxide. But when we overbreathe, we have then reset the brain stem. So we have told it, you should not tolerate this much carbon dioxide, you should only tolerate this much. So we tolerate slightly less. So that goes hand in hand. If we have a fast breathing rate, normally it's only like 10, 12 breaths per minute. And many people, I mean, I've counted the number of breaths on hundreds of people during the years without them knowing it. And very often they have 16, 18, 20, even 25 breaths per minute. And whenever I come across a person with 25 or even 30 breaths per minute, I still can't believe it, because that is why it is so easy to hide this hidden form of hyperventilation, because we can still take 30 breaths per minute, which is 2, 3, 4 times as much as normal, and still we don't realize that person is doing severe hyperventilation. So anyway, carbon dioxide controls breathing, what tells us if breathing is our number one bodily function and it's controlled by carbon dioxide, well, then it obviously cannot just be a waste product, right? And further, carbon dioxide dilates the blood vessels. So if you have a high pulse, a heart beating very fast, or you have high blood pressure, well, the first thing you should look at is your breathing, because really the breathing rhythm is controlling the heart rhythm and also the brain rhythm, which makes a lot of sense. And that when you look at it from the carbon dioxide perspective, if you then overbreathe, you breathe out too much carbon dioxide, then your blood vessel will start to constrict, because the smooth muscles surrounding the blood vessels, they are affected by carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide makes the smooth muscles relax and widen. So if we have overbreathing, then we have constricted blood vessels. So you will deprive your brain of some of the blood and oxygen it needs. So you will get more stressed, obviously, but also your muscles and your other organs and tissues.
Wow. So just to ask you a couple of questions on some of that then.
Yeah.
By the way, so interesting. And so the first bit, not really a question, but more of a statement, is it feels like is the word homeostasis? We're trying to find balance. Is that the right word? And so, like you said, with water, a little bit is we need some, but too much can kill us. Too much cold is bad for us. Too much hot is bad for us. Too much food, not enough food, and the same with air. So why is it that we are so prone right now to being a globe of overbreathers? What is it that's making us all do this thing wrong, which should be so natural for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that there are several aspects to that. One is we do as our parents do, as our society do, and we have a stressful society. And when we are stressed, our breathing is obviously also stressed, because it will reflect that stress. So when we grow up and we look around and we see, okay, these are my role models, that's how they are breathing, so I just do the same. I think that is one aspect. Another aspect is that even though the amount of carbon dioxide we inhale is very, very tiny, it's 0.04%, which is virtually nothing. But since the Industrial Revolution started about 250 years ago, it has increased by 60 or 70%. So even though it's very small, we still, with each breath, take in slightly more carbon dioxide. So
wow,
that could lead to if we're not able to tolerate carbon dioxide in a good way, then that will lead to more overbreathing. And also another aspect is that, for example, if we sit a group of people in a room, we have a conference room, we have a board meeting or whatever, we sit there 5 or 10 people, and after a while someone say, oh, the air quality is so horrible, we need to open a window or something. And the fact is, because we are carbon dioxide producers, we manufacture carbon dioxide in our bodies. So if we inhale about 0.04%, we exhale about 100 times more. So about 4%. So after a while, the air will be filled with carbon dioxide. But still, it takes quite a lot of time. But still, there is a difference if it's 0.04%
yes,
in the atmosphere, or if it's 0.5%. I mean, if it's so, some people then will feel tired, for example, and we think the air quality is not good. And I think that is a sign of poor tolerance for carbon dioxide, because not all person will react in the same way. So these days we spend more time indoors, and we have more insulated houses and buildings. So most likely we have higher levels of carbon dioxide that we are exposed to, which also then drives overbreathing, because carbon dioxide stimulates the breathing. So that's another aspect, that the carbon dioxide increase in the atmosphere as well as the indoor air. And then if you are able to tolerate it, on the other hand, then you are able to reap the benefits of this development, I think. It's like similar to wearing a mask, which is popular these days.
yes,
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to open their mouth because they can't cope with, because you build up some carbon dioxide in the mask, right? And they will open their mouth, they will start to overbreathe. So for them, wearing a mask is probably detrimental. It will put them in a state of fight flight, because they will end up being mouth breathers. They will end up breathing shallowly and faster. While if you're able to cope with wearing the mask, if you know that nasal breathing is good and you try to remain calm, then that is actually a way of doing breathing retraining to wear a mask then. And finally, I talked about the reason why we are overbreathing. Well, it's the stressed out people around us. It's the increase in the atmosphere. It's the increase in the indoor air. And finally, I think it also has to do with fears. We have a lot of emotions that we, instead of dealing with them, we engage in drinking or gambling or working or whatever we do. It's like we do a lot of these fight flight activities in order to not get in touch with all these traumas and fears and whatnot we have. And if we think about it, we have a lot of these situated in the stomach area, because we all know that if we should do something that is uncomfortable, we may need to go to the toilet, or we get an upset stomach, which tells us that there is a really close relationship between our difficult emotions and the stomach area. So a way to look at it is evolutionary wise, when there was some stress before, there is a tiger, and we ran away from it. So we engaged in physical activity. Today we have different types of stress, like an angry customer on the phone or an email or whatnot, and we engage in our fight and flight response, but it's not followed by physical activity. So with our breath, we can run away from these unpleasant emotions by moving it up higher up in the chest. Does it make sense? So before we were exposed to some unpleasant things, we ran away from it. Now we run away from it by moving up our breath higher up.
I'm very interested to understand that more, because you're right. I only this year I watched myself back doing a breathing video for there's a breathwork called Soma, and I was doing one of their breathing exercises with the main kind of person that runs the company, and I was going, and I didn't even realise. I was like, oh my god! Why is it moved up then? Why are we doing this as well? What's causing that?
If you want to avoid these unpleasant feelings, then you can't engage in diaphragmatic breathing, because the diaphragm will then put you in touch with these traumas or these fears or whatnot. So a way to avoid that is to move up the breath higher up in the chest. And further, we have this amygdala, right? That is called the quick fear response in our brain. And studies have shown that amygdala is triggered with carbon dioxide. So that's another aspect of overbreathing. If you overbreathe, then you breathe out a lot of carbon dioxide. So you won't reach the level of carbon dioxide needed in order to trigger the amygdala. So that's another aspect of avoiding unpleasant feelings.
Oh, that's interesting. When I was training with Patrick, we would do some of the oxygen advantage exercises, which may be similar to Buteyko, I don't know, but it would be normal breath in through the nose, a normal breath out through the nose, and you would hold, and you would hold and hold, and you could do bolt score or different things. But some of the exercises, we would be walking and holding and walking and holding, and very, very quickly, me personally, my level of panic is so high.
Yeah.
And I think when I was a child, I had some problems with swimming. Maybe that didn't help. So I didn't like to be under the water. But any advice how I can bring that panic level down? Or is it just practice, more breath holds? Or is there something else maybe I need to do?
Well, I mean, there you have it, right? That panic comes from, I think, the increase in carbon dioxide, because you increase it obviously when you hold your breath, right? Because you're not exhaling it. And then you get in touch with the amygdala. And I think the reason why some people can't hold their breath for very, very long is because they don't have that many fears. And I think that's a major aspect. I remember when I started and doing breathing retraining, and I figured, coming from this turbo world, that, okay, I should have the world's best breathing in the shortest period of time. And then I got really annoyed when that didn't work, because you can't really go into performance mode when it's about to improve your breathing. You have to find the relaxation. I think relaxation is the key. But it took me a while to understand that. And I also noticed that there was this fear aspect of it that prevented me from being better at it. But having said that, I think a major part of good breathing is rhythmical breathing. So I don't recommend so much breath holding exercises, actually, even though it stimulates your carbon dioxide tolerance, for example. I mean, at night we call it sleep apnea, right? When we hold our breath, and we know that is totally detrimental. If you have sleep apnea, you shorten your life and you're prone to different diseases. But at daytime, I call it text message apnea or concentration apnea or computer apnea. It seems like a lot of people have problems with holding their breath. It's like, that is the fight flight response, right? Oh, there is a danger. But we tend to do that when we work on our emails or on the phone as well. So I think that is super important to try to train the rhythmic breath. So when I do carbon dioxide training, for example, instead of doing breath hold, I just prolong my exhalation. So when I bike to work this morning, for example, if I want to, I don't need to increase the speed. I can do it when out walking or biking or jogging, any physical activity, basically. I just prolong the exhalation slightly, and I can feel the carbon dioxide effect, which is really, it's a calming effect.
Okay, yes.
If I overdo it, I will get into a state of fear.
Okay, that's interesting. So that state of fear still exists for you, but it's further away than it was when you started.
Okay, knock on wood here, but I think I have really not that many fears these days compared to before. It's a huge difference.
Wow. I wanted to ask you. You said that when we overbreathe, the brainstem will bring I think you said the need to breathe, the tolerance down.
Yeah.
So that's why, for example, when you do Wim Hof breathing, you can hold your breath for 2-3 minutes because you've hyperventilated for 30, 60, 90 breaths. But can I ask you, why does that happen? And if we hyperventilate, why can we hold our breath for so much longer? I know we've blown off so much CO2, but I still don't understand why that means we can hold our breath. Why does the tolerance come down?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason. When we hyperventilate, like in Wim Hof method, you overbreathe for some time and you lower the CO2, you blow off a lot of it. So that basically means that even if you have the brainstem, the breathing center set at the same level, but since you are lowering it so much, it will then take your body quite a long time to produce the CO2 needed in order to stimulate the breathing signal.
So the CO2 is lower, but is the trigger, is that higher, or is the trigger always the same once you get your CO2 back?
No, you can reset the trigger. I mean, by training yourself to tolerate more carbon dioxide, you will. It's similar to, we have a temperature sensor as well. So when we get fever, that temperature sensor has been changed. So the body is saying, instead of having normal temperature, we should have this higher. And then the body figures, after the infection is gone, okay, let's go back to.
Right.
So it's the same with the breathing center. It is possible to retrain it to tolerate more. So I guess what you do with the Wim Hof exercise, you lower the CO2 a lot, and then you hold your breath. So you increase it, and probably you increase it more than it was before. So in a way, I think it's similar to we talk about metabolic flexibility when you do intermittent fasting. You help your body tolerate more hours without food. I think it's similar. You create a breathing flexibility in a way. But at the same time, just as I don't like so much doing exercises where you hold your breath in order to reach where you want to be. I think to keep the rhythm, because if you think about it, everything in the universe basically has a rhythm. We have the day and night, we have the moon cycle, menstrual cycle, we have different hormones that some are more active when we should go to sleep and some more active in the morning. We have the heart rhythm, brain rhythm, etc. And the breathing rhythm lays the foundation for all of them, I think. So just as I think that is very important, I also think there is an interesting aspect. So if I do Wim Hof, which I've done a number of times, and I feel really relaxed afterwards and I feel energized. And some people say that they're also rebirthing and holotropic breathing, where you engage in forceful breathing, and that is a way of getting in touch with your traumas. And I think you do. You actually you lower the CO2, and that helps your body to adapt more. But like in Wim Hof breathing, for example, then when you lower the CO2, you will also automatically increase adrenaline. So a study I did on a bunch of medical students, they found that they measured adrenaline and carbon dioxide. So when they were hyperventilating normal air,
Yes.
The carbon dioxide was, I think, lowered by 50%. It was halved. And the adrenaline increased by 360%.
Wow.
Which makes a lot of sense because that's a huge stress response to the body when we have too low CO2. But then they did it again, the study, they were hyperventilating another time, and this time the inhaled air contained 5% carbon dioxide, 100 times more than normal. So the carbon dioxide levels were virtually unchanged. And the interesting thing was the adrenaline was also unchanged, telling us that it's the low carbon dioxide that increases adrenaline. Because carbon dioxide, as well as it has a widening and relaxing effect on the blood vessels, the smooth muscles surrounding the blood vessels, those smooth muscles, we also have smooth muscles surrounding the airways. So if you blow off CO2, then you will get narrow airways. They will constrict just like the blood vessels when we have lack of CO2. And we know that, for example, if we are allergic and we get this anaphylactic shock when our life is at danger, and we get an epinephrine pen, right? That is adrenaline, because adrenaline has such a widening effect. Which makes sense. When we're in stress, we need to breathe a lot. So we need a lot of adrenaline in order to open up the airways.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that's fascinating.
So when you lower CO2, you increase adrenaline. So anyway, in regards to the Wim Hof breathing, that means that, okay, you lower CO2 and then you increase adrenaline. And then when you hold your breath, you increase your carbon dioxide levels, and people feel energized and they feel relaxed and they feel brave, and they feel that they can take on more, that they feel very strong. But you have achieved that state through fight flight,
right?
Which is, I mean, there is, for example, if we get cancer, we talk about, oh, fuck cancer and it's horrible and I'm gonna fight the disease. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that the war, we should win the war against cancer or the war against drugs, or we're gonna fight that city and we're gonna bomb it and destroy it in order to save it. I think that there is another level. So in my view, I think we should go the route via accepting, embracing, instead of fighting, because at the end of the day, when we go into fight flight, we turn down the immune system. That's why you get, for example, if you have an organ transplant, you get stress hormones in order to suppress the immune system.
Right.
So when we're in fight flight, we're stressed, so we suppress the immune system. So if I want to really fight or battle this cancer, I think it is better done via parasympathetic, via rest and digest, via accepting, via embracing, via trying to understand, is this a message from my body, and what is it that is trying to tell me? What is it that I'm doing that is not optimum? What do I need to change? So if I want to get to this state of relaxation and feeling strong, you can do it via fight, flight, and adrenaline,
Yes.
and then you will be able to deal with these things, these incoming stimuli, with more fight, flight, because you're strengthening that system. You will be better at fighting that tiger or whatever. But I'm not sure that that is what we need these days. I think it is more efficient to reach this state via, if this is parasympathetic, to reach it via parasympathetic.
That's so interesting, because actually I had a question I wanted to ask you about what is the relationship between slow nasal breathing and the immune system, but I think I understand. So it puts us into a parasympathetic rest and digest state, and then that means that our body has the ability to recover better because it's not stressed. Would that be?
Yeah.
Okay, so can I ask you this then? So let's take cancer as the example. Would there be a cumulative benefit if I was in rest and digest all day, but then I did some cold exposure, some sauna, and some Wim Hof breathing, for example, little bits, and intermittent fasting, because they're all stressors, aren't they? But if you had that baseline of rest and digest, would there be an extra benefit, or would you say no, stay in rest and digest if you have something like cancer? What do you think?
No, I think both ways. My analogy for that is, if you exercise, we can do high intense activity, and a lot of people love that. And I think a major reason why we do that, we love the adrenaline rush. And we may not aware of it, but we are to a certain extent adrenaline junkies.
Yes,
most of us, yeah.
Me too.
Yes, so I've lived most of my life there, stressing up myself and making other people stressed out. But so when I do exercise, I may do 95% in a low intense fashion. I think that evolutionary wise, that is where we come from. We've been, sometimes we've been hunting, but mostly we've been walking and picking berries or nuts or mushrooms or whatever. And then sometimes we engage in the more high intense activities. So when I train, I may do 5 or 10% of it. So that's my view on it. Yeah, sure, do whatever we like, but I think the major part is the parasympathetic activity. And people, especially if you're a real adrenaline junkie, you will feel that really boring. So I translated a book once. It's called The Maffetone Method. So this guy, Philip Maffetone, he has published, I think, 8 books or so about exercising, and he promotes low intense activity.
Right.
And he has even trained people that have Olympia medals, because he found out that when he ran a marathon and he woke up in the emergency room and realized, okay, I ran a marathon, but I'm not healthy. I may be fit, but me and all the other people around me, they had just enormous willpower, so they have been able to run over their bodies. So that's started his journey, realizing what it is that we need. And he thinks laying the foundation, the aerobic foundation is crucial. So I remember, obviously, when I translated the book, I followed his advice, and I remember how I felt, oh, this is so boring. I'm jogging, but it's so slow. So I couldn't almost bear it.
How did you eventually cope with that? Because when you're saying that, I feel the same. I want to be at 110% all the time. Go. And it's very, very hard for me to relax. So how did you bring it down? Was it breathing techniques? Was it something else?
Yeah, at the time when I was jogging there, according to his method, it was to follow a specific formula and not go above a certain pulse. It's called the Maffetone method, At the time, I didn't know much about nasal breathing, so I just checked my pulse watch and didn't go above it. The Maffetone formula, it's called.
Okay, look at that.
Want to Google it.
Yeah, fantastic. Can I ask you, do you know much about the relationship with chewing and headspace? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. I have something here. This is Jaw Pair. It's a Swedish company, so
Okay.
it's a resistance. You just chew it like a not a chewing gum, but a similar principle. And I am surprised to find out how many people grind their teeth at night. So a lot of people have something in the mouth to prevent them from grinding their teeth, and I'm quite certain it has to do with this muscle, the jaw, and how we actually don't use it as much as we have done in our revolution, because today we are eating baby food, aren't we?
Yes.
To a large extent, yes. So we're not chewing. So
yeah.
The reason why we grind our teeth at night is probably because we're not using this very strong muscle enough. So yeah, I've been doing this for some time now, trying out different types of product where you chew when not eating, and I feel that it's beneficial. And from a breathing perspective, I also think it has if you have your mouth open, for example, there will probably be more tensions in your jaw. Or there is a really close relationship. When women are giving birth, many women can testify to that there is the close relationship. It's called a fear, tense, pain cycle. The woman is afraid of what's coming and tense up and then experience more pain. And when you look at it, you can see that from the breathing perspective as well, realizing that in that vicious cycle, the fear, tense, pain, as soon as you get afraid, your breathing will change, and that will actually induce more tense muscles. You will, like this, when you stop breathing and when you're in fight flight, it makes sense. The fight flight response really activates your muscle. You can't meet a tiger by just standing like a jelly bean, or you will really engage your leg muscles, your arm muscles, to be ready to either run away or to fight it. So with our breath, I think we can strengthening the fight flight response, and then we will get more tense. And for some people, they will get tense in their shoulders or in their hip, and some will get more tense in their jaw. So when we start to breathe rhythmically and low and slow through our nose, we will reduce the tensions, whether it's in the jaw or the neck or shoulders.
That's right, because I've done mouth taping at night.
Yeah.
And I saw a little bit of benefit, but me personally, I have more of the problem of clenching.
Right.
So the mouth tape, maybe there's a few times it's open, but most of the time I wake up and my jaw's, and that's very interesting. This is just something I'm learning very recently, is we don't use the jaw properly. We need to use the jaw more. Can I ask you, do you think chewing gum would help, or is it not tough enough if you chew gum in the day?
I don't think it's tough enough.
No, it needs to be something proper, like good food, raw food maybe, or this device that you have. Okay, that's
or like I have an office in Sri Lanka. When I was there last time, I mean, they chew the fish, the bones.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And I know some people chew jerky, dry meat. Quite tough. Yeah. So in James Nestor's book, he talks about how I think he had a scan. And then he did some chewing, and then they scanned again, and he'd increased capacity in his skull by the equivalent of, I think, 4 pennies, little coins worth of capacity. It's like, wow, because I think the stem cells in our skull are still active, and they can create more space if we've got a narrow airway. So it's very, very interesting
Indeed.
thing.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking, oh my God, like yesterday I had like baby food. I had mashed potato and some chili, and it was all just you could drink it almost. So no, very, very interesting. Oh,
And also, like when I talked to the developer of this product, I mean, he thinks, which I agree, that we say if I put this in my mouth and I start to chew, maybe you can see I'm
yes,
stimulating.
yes, that's interesting. Okay,
So
so there's
most
something
likely
happening.
we will also stimulate the blood flow through the brain.
Ah. It's exciting. Breathing is such an exciting field, I think, because even though, do you feel that it's changing? Can you see over the last few years it's getting more and more popular? What
Oh
do you
yeah,
think?
big time. Yeah, when I started, it was still a bit obscure, and I think this year with Corona, a lot of people. It's not a lot about it in the media, which is kind of surprising. I mean,
Yeah.
why in the world are we not talking about nasal breathing to start with? That's interesting. But anyway, the disease, the corona, it affects your airways. So I have noticed a lot of interest from people wanting to improve their breathing, and they realize that if I have poor breathing, shallow breathing, the air is not circulating in the lungs, for example, there is a higher risk I will create an environment that is favorable for bacterial growth and virus growth. So and a lot of people also experience that they get benefits from it. Whether they had corona, they seem to recover quite fast. I mean, in general, that is what I hear. This is not a research study I have done, but the feedback I get, oh, this has helped me so much. To because one aspect is the fear. It's like almost the whole planet has a collective fear and panic attack these days, where we are to a large extent afraid.
Yes.
So engaging in your breathing helps you actually to reduce that fear.
Just relax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
relax. and
Well,
and
so so
so
go
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, no, sorry, but again, if you get hit by the disease, you get hit by coronavirus, and you engage in the fear, you will get into fight flight, right? So then you will suppress your immune system. So already there, it's like your ability to deal with that infection will be reduced quite a bit. So that is a major part to be able to, I think, address your emotional states.
And this might be more of a controversial question, but the mask, does that offer any benefits as far as you're aware? Is it a good thing to have a mask or a bad thing, or is it, we don't know?
I just noticed when I mean, where I live here in Sweden, we don't have mandatory masks, but I
Okay.
tried a number of times just to educate myself. And when I do, I just noticed that it gets a little bit harder to breathe. And then there is a higher risk, obviously, that you will open your mouth, because
Yes.
mouth breathing means low CO2 tolerance. And if you have a mask where you trap some of the CO2 and you breathe it, you will then have higher levels of CO2. So my take on it is just that if you're using it, try to breathe through your nose. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it will take you into fight flight, and it then could be detrimental. But then obviously when you see people wear it and they touch their face all the time, and they put it down like that, and then I'm not certain that it will give that much benefit, except the psychological factor, that okay, I'm doing this and I know it works. If you believe in it, then it will probably have a good effect.
Maybe a little bit placebo. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm doing something. Because the thing I've been thinking recently is we've got to be careful with the masks if they're dirty. Because before, what I would do, I would wear my mask, put it in my pocket,
yeah,
1 week, mask back on again,
yeah.
breathing into it, gets a little bit damp, it goes back in the pocket. And then you have to be really careful because you put this dirty mask on and you breathe all of this germs and bacteria into your mouth. So I've been, right, I wear my mask once and then I wash it, because we have masks that you can wash now, the cloth ones, because I think maybe we create a new problem for ourselves now with dirty masks. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a colleague in China, and they've been wearing masks for a long time because the poor air quality. And they say, well, it lasts for a couple of hours, and then you need to change it.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting topic. So, but in general, I think we are in a way reacting from, we are afraid of dying, we are afraid of getting sick, we are afraid of the near and dear ones getting sick or die. So in a way, we react with a fight flight response to all of this. If we take a step back and we look at the whole world and the whole reaction, it really, in my view, it is a fight flight response. And as I saw a video a while ago, he was 24 years with the FBI, was a hostage negotiator, and one of the things he says, you know, when you're afraid, you can't think, period. And that's from his experience, not in regards to Corona, but in regards to hostage situation and in regards to negotiating with enemies. Or so he worked internationally and been all over the planet and helping out in different conflicts. And he said, my main task is to get information from the other person on the other side of the table. And in order to get that information, I have to help them get out of fear. If they're afraid, my mission will fail, which makes a lot of sense. So in his view, if you're afraid, you can't think. And I'm not saying that we can't think, but I think we have a tendency to make decisions that are more based on emotions than are based on logical. So in that sense, maybe the wearing the mask is more an emotional response than a logical response.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, and yeah, you're right, isn't it? We make better decisions maybe when we're calmer because we can think a little bit clearer and we're not thinking about maybe short term. We can think, I don't know. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, but if you just look at the brain, how we have the brain stem, and then we have the reptilian brain, then we have the mammalian brain, and then we have the neocortex. So the blood comes from beneath. It starts first to fill which is obviously, we have the brain stem, there we have temperature, we have respiration, heartbeat, all of these survival that are crucial for survival. And then we have reptilian, fight, flight, and then we have mammalian, which is our emotions. And the last one to get blood and oxygen is our neocortex, our logical thinking. So these systems, they are much older. If I'm about to drown, I can't think of, okay, what shall I eat for dinner? It's all about getting the next breath, right?
Yes.
The same if we're in reptilian brain, if it's fight, flight, or also if I'm in emotional state. And it's not only about fear. The same goes for love. I mean, if we're desperately in love, we are rarely the smartest thinkers. We just everything is just
yeah. That's very true, isn't it? Yeah, that first year or two, it's just you're not thinking completely rationally. I cannot believe 1 hour has gone by. So I think we need to ask you one last question, and then I would love it maybe, Anders, if we could do another one of these in the new year, because I could talk to you for hours, and it's been such an interesting experience, and I hope that the viewers have enjoyed it. What is your routine? What do you do daily or weekly? Can you give us a little breathing flavour of what you do?
Well, one thing I do is to use the relaxator. It's a little breathing device. It gives you a resistance on you put it in your mouth, so it gives you resistance on your out breath. So, for example, if I have a tight deadline or something, then then there is a tendency for my breath. I have a tendency to hold my breath or breathe faster, because it's virtually impossible, at least for me, to, even though been doing this for more than 10 years now, when I'm engaged in something, to maintain good breathing. I'm getting better and better at it, but it's still hard. So I find that very beneficial to help me with the low and slow and rhythmical breath. And I do, when I exercise, I always do nasal breathing. My attitude is, don't go faster than your nose will allow you. That's my motto. And my routine, I try to go to bed. I also know that sleep is very, very important. So I try to go to bed at 10 o'clock, preferably, and I really prioritize sleep. I never set my alarm if I don't have to. I try to listen to my body. It also goes when it's about food, when it's about exercise, when it's about work. It's one thing to work and live up here in your brain, but that's just one part of us, and the brain doesn't have the whole picture. Sometimes we just need to relax so I call it reflection and integration. So I tend to do that several times per week in bed, either before going to bed or before getting up in the morning. One hand on the chest, one hand on the stomach, just breathing low and slow, and reflect a little bit. What's going on in my life? Where am I heading?
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Right, I will. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people find you if people want to learn more about you and about your book? Where can they go?
Consciousbreathing.com.
Wonderful. And also, guys, go and subscribe on Anders' YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel called?
Conscious Breathing.
It's also Conscious Breathing. Wonderful. Yeah. So it's got some great videos on there. I love the one with the cold shower and the breathing. So guys, after this video, go on Conscious Breathing on YouTube, click subscribe, and you'll get some great content there as well. I'll put all the links to everything in the description below. Anders, any last words from yourself before we wrap up?
Well, you asked about if I have any daily routines, and I have one more. Let me show you.
Oh, fantastic.
So this is a carbon dioxide suit. It looks like a space suit. You put it on, you vacuum pump out the air, and then you fill it up with carbon dioxide, and you feel super relaxed. You stay there in for half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour.
Wow. What's the percentage of CO2 to O2 in there? It's not pure O2, CO2, I guess.
It is 100%.
It's pure.
CO2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you absorb it through the skin, and thereby you will relax these smooth muscles, so you will increase the circulation, and it's quite exciting. We are still just developing it, but it goes hand in hand with the breathing, of course, which is to a large extent about to learn to tolerate more carbon dioxide.
I think Patrick said to me in one of the trainings that first responders, firefighters and ambulances used to give people CO2 in the masks to calm them down years ago, and then CO2 got a bad publicity, and now they give them O2. And I thought that was very interesting because now people think it's waste gas. You can't give them CO2. Yeah,
so we need to change that. It's a bit of a challenge though, because we also have the CO2 is the main problem with the greenhouse gas, right? And
yes, it's got a bad name. Bad.
Every aspect is a bad thing. So
but we need it. Okay, right. Well, lovely. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. I've absolutely loved this Breathcast, and I hope we can do maybe a part 2 next year, maybe in January or February. We can do some more.
Mike.
Wonderful. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and Anders, thank you so much. Everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, guys, thank you for watching that Breathcast with Anders Olsson. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. Isn't it wonderful to speak to these experts? So I asked you to stick around for an announcement, and the announcement is this. On February 14th, on Valentine's Day, me and my best friend and a group of others will be climbing the UK's 3 tallest mountains, Wim Hof style. So still in the middle of winter, we're going to be shirtless, we're going to be in our shorts, and we're doing it for charity. And what is that charity? Well, it's called Our Underground Railway. And it's a charity which I believe Tony Robbins has been on the board of advisors, and there's some links in the description below. But in short, this charity is set up to save children from slavery. And you think slavery and children, what's going on? Is that really a thing still? It really is, and it's horrible, and it's an uncomfortable subject, and people don't give it enough airtime. And we want to go out there and we want to raise $10,000 or $10,500 to go out there and save 3 children. And essentially what this charity will do is they'll go out and they'll either pretend to purchase these children or they'll go undercover and try and rescue them. But they said it takes around $3,500 to save one child. So our plan is 3 peaks, 3 mountains. Can we save 3 lives? So the description is, the link is in the description below. It's the biggest challenge that I've ever done. I've done a couple of mountains in my shorts. We're going to put some regular updates on here as well. This is the first time that I've talked publicly about this. We started the campaign a little while ago. I think we're almost up to $500, so we've got a way to go. If you can afford a couple of pounds, a couple of dollars, a couple of euros, and you can donate to the official Our Underground Railway link to help us with this cause, that would be incredible. And if you can't afford to, but you can share the link on our behalf, that would be brilliant as well, just to help get that message out there. Without saying any more, I will say thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to this part as well. It's an important subject. We'll talk more about it over the coming videos as well. And thanks for sticking through to the end to listen as well. And yeah, that's it. So see you on the next Breathcast. Thanks.